All right, this is really what we have to understand our past, to understand where we're going, to even have any hope to understand. This is Venus. This is a welding arc. Now, this is a discharge into Venus, not an escape from Venus. This is something discharged into Venus. All right, into Venus with just like an arc welder. Anybody who's ever done any welding knows that's like an arc. And it just hit right here. Now, who discharged into that? And what would discharge? Well, a magnetic field, an atmosphere, because you need a little bit of atmosphere to make that thing burn, basically, because that's burning. You have certain gases and all that stuff happen. So it takes all the gases and it took all the magnetic field from Mars. And here's what happened to Mars. It got hit by Venus, scraped all the way across, wider than the United States. It killed virtually everything on Mars, took its magnetic field and atmosphere, and left it a dead red planet. And the red is from, originally, I imagine there was probably water still on here after this impact. And that sort of evaporated into space because there would be nothing really to hold those molecules. They're light enough to float away if there was nothing pulling them in, I believe. Because there was never any more vegetation growing here and no atmosphere to hold the water in. So, but I think there was probably water here, and because it shows evidence of water everywhere on the planet, but it dried up, and it had nowhere to dry up and condense and come back because there's no magnetic field, and it just went into space. That's my understanding to this point. So now we have Venus impacting Mars, throwing body parts everywhere in space. And you say body parts, they're 140-mile wide heart. How could that be? Was there 140-mile hearts up here? Well, could have been, or they were here on Earth. All right, 140-mile heart. Now, let's see. This is the giant fish, which I believe is Aries, because the gods changed themselves into animals to avoid Typhon, who is the dragon right here. And his body runs all across North Africa. I've shown this hundreds of times. This is his head right here. All right. Here's his throat running down, 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 down. This is his head and his red flared eye. And here's the little stuff they have that goes on the side of the parade dragons in China and stuff like that. You see? All of this stuff down here, that's just runoff of like decaying moisture out of a dead body. It runs all the way down. Here's his whole entire length. I'm not going to show him again in extreme detail because it just takes forever. This is his tip of his nose, and his tail comes way out to here. This is his body proper. These are the two legs, and they went into viper coils. Exactly like it says in the ancient text. They describe it, and they describe this battle in Apollodorus, and I will read this to you in a minute. And Zeus came and cut his throat, it says, with his great and mighty sword. And that's what happened, is the throat was cut. Right there. And this is what happens with blood, is the black and the red separate, and they actually make a membrane between each other because they do not mix. Watch right here. They make a membrane to stay away from each other because they will not mix. See? Well, actually, this is as close as I've ever seen them get together. Normally, there's a membrane. But the black turns black, and nothing grows. The red stays red. And stuff grows right here in the desert. It grows nice and green, too. As long as you got red blood, you're going to have green growth. You got black blood, nothing grows. It's expended, and it turns hard. Now up here, this is just moisture running out of the scaled throat of this dragon. Those are dragon scales. Just take your time and look at it. Just think, be logical for them. All right, think a little bit. What do you see? You see dragon scales. You see breaks, break. There's all these little cracks between them. That's so he can bend his neck. And this is the throat. It runs all the way down. It's called the Dragon River, Drach River. And it's the longest river in North Africa, I think. It runs all the way up from here, and runs all the way down, all the way down through his body, and then through the guts and everything else. So now, we're talking about a 140-mile heart. I think this is the heart right here. I believe this is the heart right in here, and it pumps blood this direction and up in this direction. Is it 140 miles? I don't know. Probably not. But let's go to the way outside of it. If it was started here and it went over to here, it would be, well, let's just change this up to miles. Yeah, it's only 32 miles. It's kind of small. But, you know, so there was something much bigger. I believe that's the heart. That's all I can take away. You see the two bags of blood? This one, oops. This one here is like, I think, maybe the artery side, I don't know. But they have tubing coming up through here. It's obviously it's a dragon, so I don't know what's going on. But you got a lot of red blood coming out of here. That's not normal in our hearts, I don't think. This looks like something ate into it or something. I don't know. There's a lot to look at here. You know, a doctor would have a great time looking at this, because yeah, I looked at it's got a cloaca. This is where it poops, right out here, right down out through here. And this is like we have in our colon too. You have little ripply muscles, basically, to force the poop down, and it comes right out here. And that's why they're living here, because there's so much fertility in poop. Poop makes things grow very, very well. So they're living down in here, right where it discharges into it. And the other side here is the other side of cloaca, which is the fluids, come down this side. The other one is more, the poop side over here. But anyway, that's and then they come together and they discharge and they make the strangest pattern. Now, this might also be something which I don't understand, but it's coming out of this area and flowing down through here. What it is, I don't know. This could be strictly dragon related, because it is dragon scale related, I can tell you that. I don't think we have too many of these in our body. Now what this is, it looks like some kind of organ. Doing what? I don't know. But it does appear to be dumping out along with these other, with the cloaca part. This one here. These are very close to each other. I'd say that's the fluid side. draining here. See, it drains down. And that's the fluid side. Comes all the way down and out. And this is the poop side. And that's really basically the muscles that pinch together so you don't poop. There's one side and there's the other side, and it's coming down, and they come together here. And then this one over here, which is, I don't know what it is. I know it's something different than in us. It certainly is some kind of a discharge. There is no question about that. And it meets up with the other ones. All right, it comes down, comes down, comes down. And they come together into this mess here. And look at this. Look at the colors. Look at the textures. That's only one part of it. Wait till you see the other part. Look at that. Isn't that something? Almost looks like scales. But it seems to be discharge. I would say that's a discharge. Now look down here. All that stuff keeps coming down, piling up here. All right? Whatever it is, I don't know what it is. Probably something, maybe phosphates or something. I don't know. That could be phosphates. It could be anything. I don't know what it is. But over here, let's back out of here so that we can see as it comes together. Again, this is where he's pooping. And it's coming down here, and this is the poop piled up. I know it sounds insane, but it just is the way it is. It's all coming down here, and it piles up in the strangest form. Look, watch this. You ever seen anything like that before? You gotta let it settle in. It comes down and it just piles up in these piles. You see that? What the heck is going on? You know, I don't know what to say. I think that's poop. Crazy as it looks, I mean, all of that pattern like that, it doesn't make sense. I have to agree. But what does make sense? And for this much poop, if this was all poop, this thing must be still discharging or something. It's coming right out of his rear end here, just exactly where it should be. And it is a cloaca. Of that, there is no real dispute as far as I can determine. And his tail just keeps on going. And this is still dragon tail here. I know they can see these things from space. Very, very simple, easy to see. And they won't talk about it. And I've been trying to get through to somebody. They just refuse to discuss it. It changes everything in our history. It's quite disturbing to most people, virtually everybody. And but this is a dragon, and there it is at the here. So what I say is, Sahara is only like 32 miles, which is it's a reasonable size. Now, this was Ares, who was god of war, Mars. Mars was destroyed by Venus that hit Mars, wiped it out. Now, they say Ares was associated to Mars as the god. Let's look into that a little bit. This gets very, very deep, but I find it very interesting. You see, this is where it gets into, you got your Greeks and then you got your Romans. One of them's got a name for them, the other one's got a name. In Roman mythology, Mars is the god of war, known for his association with military power and conflict. He is the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Ares, who I believe was a fish. While both represent war, Mars is often depicted as a more level-headed and virtuous figure compared to the often impulsive and destructive Ares. Now, Ares, I believe, was the fish that got attacked by Typhon, which I just showed you here in the desert. He changed himself into a fish. And here it is. He's got an attack. Typhon spit all this nasty stuff out to attack him. And it came out of his beards. You see this? That is some ugly, ugly, ugly stuff. And that is coming down, flowing in a torrent at Ares. And hit him on his fish's fin, right up there. So all of that nasty stuff came down, literally combusting at his fin and melting his scales on his body. You see right there? It melted the scales. Fish have scales that protect their body, just like we have skin, only they have scales. Well, then they have skin too. However, the scales were melted right down. We can see the blood vessels, right? Don't forget, we're looking at a giant dragon right here. Here's his head, and he's spitting all that nasty stuff down right onto Ares' fin. And then right there is where you got flesh. Fin is just a floppy thing that's going on there. The flesh is here. And down inside the flesh is the same as inside of us. There's arteries. There's blood vessels. There's tiny little blood vessels. There's capillaries at the end of the blood vessels. There's red blood inside of all the arterial network. There's the capillaries that dump into the black veins, which work with the lymphatic system, and we can see all that right here. Extremely clearly coming down with a heavy amount of oxygenated blood, which makes things grow green in the desert. The black, there's nothing grows there. It doesn't grow there. This is the good blood, and there's still vitality to that blood. And as it comes down, it feeds off and feeds off and feeds off all of the blood cells that would have been here. And then it ends up going right into an artery. The black one here is the artery. Now, not only does it hit the capillaries, which are these very, very pinchy little ones, it comes down and gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And at a certain layer here, it starts to pinch and create the capillaries. And then it squirts the remnants into the vein, which is here, the black. And it's porous. Veins are porous. They can absorb all the way along their length. You see all these little lines here? That's your lymphatic system. That is the fluid-filled highway that runs your whole lymph system. And it is absorbing fluids. You see right here? It's absorbing fluids before they get into the lymph, into the vein to be squirted back to the heart and lung. It's taking them, pulling out the stuff that it wants to keep inside the lymph. You see the line here and the line here? This is right in this area is where you got your capillaries. And that was so powerful, that venom, that it ate right through the scales. And over here I can show where it attacked the lymph and killed the lymph nodes. You can learn everything. You can be a doctor by studying this easily. You can understand more than a doctor by looking at mud fossils. I'm not kidding you. And as a matter of fact, just by having mud fossils, I discovered the interstitium, which they say is a newfound organ, which they never knew about because by the time they did the autopsy, it was drained. This layer right here is just nothing but fluids. And there's a membrane above, a membrane below, and when they let it set, they drain the fluids out, it's gone. So all they see was a heavy-duty layer all together. The fluids are gone. They thought it was one piece. It was just, I started the research on this in 2015. So I understand this stuff very, very well. I just need to be able to discuss it with somebody that has an open audience, that we can get this stuff understood. Right now, it's just not understood. We don't understand about meteorites. We don't understand about the gods, about Ares, about the god of war, about how Mars took this hit from Venus. All of this stuff is recorded in the ancient texts. All of this. What I'm talking about, none of this is speculation. It's all in the ancient texts. This has happened in not too distant past. And when Mars was hit, it was all over. And what hit Mars? Venus. And where did Venus come from? I believe it came right out of there. That's the size of Venus coming out of the red spot. And it said in the ancient text that the feared god Jupiter, who is Zeus, gave birth to a fiery comet who turned out to be Venus. And you say, well, how could a Jupiter, a male god, give birth? It would have to have a vagina. Well, it does. It does. This red spot is not a storm. It's a mons. It's the mound of a vagina. I'm going to show you that it is. It's the mound of a vagina, and as the planet spins, it has to plow through these clouds, and the clouds have to go over that mound, and they swirl around. And these clouds are dense because the gravity is very dense. So they hit that mound, and then they swirl and swirl and swirl. I'm going to show you that there is a vagina there. And now if you don't want to see a female vagina, you just better stop right now because I'm going to show it. So here it comes. This is the birthplace of Venus as recorded in the ancient texts. And here it is right there. All right. And I can tell you right now, that is a vagina. Of that, there is zero question as far as I'm concerned because of that right there. You say, well, what is that? Well, we'll see in a second. That is obviously the shape of a vagina. This is all the tissue at the top, the labia and all that business. This is the hairline, actually the hairline. That right there is the tag that locks the vagina into the body. All right, look at this carefully. You see this? Pay very close attention to that. That's the spot that tells me 100% certainty this is what it is. Now, I also discovered that the interstitium goes everywhere around the body, everywhere it is, and it has to go through these little latches. You have two different spots that have different fluids in them that move through this latch. And they're visible, you can see them, but they are, they're biological. And then that exact spot is where it hooks in to the rest of the body. As far as I'm concerned, Jupiter is still quite alive. And this is tissue that is from a vagina. All right, take a minute to look at it. It should, you know, they have, I'm sure, much better, bigger shots of this, but I can't find them. This is the best I can do. And you can see it has all the vaginal ripples in here, and you know, that looks like the urethra to me. And this is the labia majora, majorna, something like that. And this is right here, the hairline. All right, and don't forget, this is the one I'm telling you about. That's the killer for me. And it's being pushed this way. You can see it's being sort of distorted by having to plow through those clouds. So it's pulling against this. It's literally pulling that way. It should be straight in the center. But you can see everything is moving this way. And even that is being, I don't know whether it's being, well, I guess it's being pushed this way, and all of this stuff is being pushed this way. So, all right, that makes sense. All right, because I believe it's hitting head on this way. This side of the tissue is being pushed this way. This side is being pushed this way and pushed under as it wraps around and starts to swirl down this way. And that's being pulled off. Otherwise, it should be dead center right in the middle. Let me show you that anatomically. All right, like I said, this is graphic, but it's the only way to show the truth. This is the vagina. That the thing right there that I was talking to you about before, that's the tag that holds this device, this body part in place. All right, because you're gonna, you know, it's gonna move around here and there. It's just a part of life. Every part of you moves here and there. Let's just not be silly about it. It just is the way it works, and you can't get pulled away and get ripped away and not come back to where you're supposed to be. And that's what it does. That's an anchor. This is an anchor for this piece of meat, and this has the same latch right there. That little latch coming down. And it has the two holes in the end here, like I showed you up at the one on Venus. I mean on Jupiter. There's two holes that run between each body part to continue the fluids. They're called the venal flaps. And they bring the vein fluids, which primarily, really what it is the lymph fluids, I believe. And they bring those to the next body part. And that's what this does. All right, this is going to have its own fascia, basically. The vagina will have its own surrounding tissue that keeps out foreign stuff to this particular type of tissue. And it all is going to come together in one spot, and then from there it's going to move into, you know, the buttocks or wherever it goes. But every organ, and this is obviously considered an organ, is going to have its own fascia, like its own rubber bag that coats everything there. Skin and all that tissue is coated with that fascia. And that has a certain chemistry in it, and then it goes from that through that little device into the next body part, and that will have a different chemistry, quite likely. Organs have their own specific chemistry, every one of them, as far as I can determine. And that's why you have all these different chemical colors and stuff in rocks, because they're different chemistry around different body parts, primarily. Okay, shocker du jour. Earth apparently was the mother of everything, of all the planets. Earth she bare also the fruitless deep with his raging swell. Pontus without sweet union of love. That's apparently Pistis Sophia. She didn't have sweet union of love, and she brought forth this raging swell. And this castration of Uranus. Now, Uranus was the sky, apparently, who slept, they call it, with the earth. Apparently, the sky had sex with the earth. Now, and then, well, I'll just read it to you. The castration of Uranus. Afterwards, after giving this raging swell, afterwards she lay with heaven, who was Uranus, and bare deep swirling Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, and Hyperion, Iapetus, Thea, and Rhea, Themis, and Mesophone, and gold-crowned Phoebe, and lovely Theus. After them was born Kronos. This is the guy. He castrated Uranus. So that after them was born Kronos, the wily, youngest, and most terrible of her children, and he hated his lusty sire. All right. So what happened? This goes way deep. They ended up eating the kids to keep them from trying to overthrow them. This gets extremely deep. But Apollodorus. Well, here it is right here. Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world, having wedded the earth. In other words, he had sex with the earth. They had all these monsters, 100-handers. They had 100 hands and 50 heads, each having 100 hands and 50 heads. Then they gave birth to the Cyclopses. And then Sky bound them and cast them all into Tartarus to keep them locked up so they couldn't take over. They had the same, well, Apollodorus, this is like the 2nd century BC. He wrote based on Hesiod's work in the Theogony. This is from the Theogony. Hesiod's Theogony. He wrote 800 BC. He was the first one. And the ones that told him to write were the Muses. They were the daughters of Zeus, I believe. And they said, from the Heliconian Muses, those were the daughters of Zeus, let us begin to sing, who hold the great and holy mount of Helicon, dance on soft feet about the deep blue spring and the altar of the almighty son of Kronos, all right, and which is Zeus. And this is just absolutely unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. What I told you about Typhon and the fish, let me show you exactly what it says in Apollodorus about them. All right, this is Apollodorus, and he's writing all about from Zeus and the war of the Titans, the Olympians, Apollo, Artemis, Demeter, and Persephone. Here we go, number 6, War of the Giants and Typhon. And then after that, there's Prometheus and Deucalion. Deucalion is actually Noah. Again, you got Greek and you got Roman. So this is pretty much given the Greek names, Prometheus and Deucalion. Now, here's the War of the Giants. All right, this is what happened was the earth was really upset because the gods killed all her children, which were the giants, and all of these monsters, but they were still her children. All right, so just to cut to the chase, it's all about driving and killing them all and destroying even by a mortal. Zeus forbade the dawn and the moon and the sun to shine, and he had Hercules first shot Ephesus with an arrow, but when the giant fell on the ground, somewhat revived. However, Athena's advice, Hercules dragged him outside of where he was protected in his own land, and then he died. Zeus hooked up with Hercules to kill all the giants, and they did. And they one right after throwing red-hot metal missiles at them and flailing them and all kinds of things, fighting with brazier clubs. The other giants Zeus smote, which means killed, and destroyed them with thunderbolts. This great and mighty sword. That's the Aegis holder, they call it. All right, so he destroyed them with thunderbolts, but he couldn't kill them because they were gods. He had to have Hercules. Hercules was part human, And a god could not kill another god unless he had the help of a human. So Zeus smote them, destroyed them with thunderbolts, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. Now, the gods had overcome the giants. They killed them all. Earth was enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus, which is it's like hell, and brought forth. Okay, sorry about that interruption. I believe I was talking about Zeus killing all the giants and all the children of Earth. He killed them all. And they were destroyed with thunderbolts, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. Now, when the gods, who was Zeus and his buddies, had overcome the giants, Earth was enraged, had intercourse with Tartarus. I think that's where I got cut off. And brought forth Typhon. He was a hybrid between man and beast. In size, he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. As far as his thighs go, he was of human shape. And that's the only thing they talk about is his thighs. The rest was dragon. He was of such prodigious bulk, he outtopped the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. One of his hands reached out to the west, the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads. Well, I have not found those, but they said that Zeus did cut them off. Now, from the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt. His hair streamed from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes, and we can see that very clearly, the red eye. Such and great was this Typhon when hurling kindled rocks, spitting all his stuff out, he made for the very heaven, hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight. Being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals, like a fish. However, Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance, struck him down, and cut him with his adamantine sickle. Whatever, he cut his throat. And this was known forever until we just started laughing at all this stuff because we just thought it was silly. But he's there. He's just there, and his throat is cut. All right, here's his throat. He is here, and his throat is cut. And did they know about this? When did they know about this? When did they know that that throat was cut? And that was a dragon running all the way across North Africa. How would they know that? They didn't have any space stations to look down at this, which we can't see it even with the space station. I can't believe they won't admit to this stuff. I just cannot believe it. But they won't. They were more well informed in 1375 than we are now. This is the Red Sea. All right, these are all the rulers and the lands that they controlled, and there's a whole bunch of little things in here about what they did there, and the people were pearl divers and certain did this and that, and this was the guy to control the world. Now, what about Typhon? There he is right there, all the way across North Africa. That's Typhon. Is there anything else? It just looks like a little squirrely line. Well, maybe there's something else we can see. How about that his throat is cut? I don't think they just made a mistake and missed that. Now also, I believe this is where Atlantis was, and they knew that, but it was gone. But at one time, the boats came in here into the Sahara Ocean, which drained. There used to be an ocean there, and it drained right out across Atlantis, which is right down here. You think I'm kidding? I am not kidding. You get a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, actually a 5-year-old better, and give him a mud bucket and let him play. And if he drains the mud out like this, he's going to see this. He's going to see everything draining off. Ooh, what do you see? Everything draining off. Well, how did it drain out of there? Was there a gigantic ocean in there? Yes, there was. They used to come in here and do whatever they did. That's why it's not green here. It was all salt water, basically. And when the dam broke, which was here, there was a straits right here. right there. And that's the eye of the Sahara. And when that dam broke, it just ran across out into the ocean and created the Cape Verde Islands. This is an alluvial plain, just as flat. You see it? It's just ran out of mud. And Plato said they will never speak of mud again. So much mud ran out in 24 hours. And here's where it broke, right there at this straits. They always talk about the straits when they talk about Atlantis, but they never talk about this straits. They talk about the Straits of Gibraltar. This is the straits that Atlantis controlled. In my mind, I'm virtually certain of this. And I believe there was a garrison or something over here, and they would only let the boats in. They wanted to let in if they paid, or probably. I mean, that just seems to be the way the world works. Now, at one point or another, this broke. And it came down here and washed right over the top. Well, actually, what really did happen was Atlantis supposedly sunk because they had mined under it to get all the gold and this, all this and that. It's an eyeball. It's 100% certainty it's an eyeball. And when it sunk, everything went out. And the reason I can say for 100% certainty it's an eyeball is this right here is the optic nerve coming around from this, and they come both sides, and it comes right up here. Watch this. This is an optic nerve. Watch where it breaks in. These are going to be all little blocky blocks. And if you can look up what an optic nerve has, this is exactly what it has. All of these little tiny nerve fibers come up, and they hit these blocks. Those blocks are optic nerves. Can you imagine how complicated that is? Can you comprehend that? I can't. And it's thick too. That comes down thick. And those are all optic nerves, and they run all along here. Where every one of these is an optic nerve. You see I'm up here? Same thing. From that filament coming around. Watch over here. Same thing over here. The whole thing, everywhere. It's not just here, it's not just there, it is everywhere. You see that? Takes a little while to settle in, see? How they know where to go with those little nerve fibers, yikes, yikes, and double yikes. How complicated can things get? And that's a thick. That's just, it's staggering what creatures have in them. And all that stuff comes to the optic nerve, and something goes on in here, I don't know what, but it's related to the vision, I believe. He's come out and, I don't know. But whatever happened there, it washed out, and then it came back in and put a pile of stuff right here. A lot of people say, oh, there's a big pile of stuff. How do you explain that? It washed out and it flopped back in. That's what this stuff does. And that was Atlantis, and it was on the map. I showed you a minute ago. And Typhon is on the map. They don't show the fish. I don't see the fish. But I would say this is probably Atlantis. They were the top dogs at one time. And this is clearly a boat coming in this direction. And that is Typhon's head and his cutthroat all the way across North Africa. And they show other dragons here and there too. I believe all these scaly looking things are dragons. Not sure. That one sure is. And he was attacking Ares as the fish. Now, as you know, I do all the ancient texts. Ovid, Hesiod, Plato, Herodotus, all of them, because they all have a similar and a somewhat different take on things. Most of them very, very close. And it says, I asked, well, here was my question. Do virtually all ancient cultures speak of giants, dragons, wars in the heavens, and gods? Yes. Many ancient cultures around the world contain myths and stories that feature giants, dragons or dragon-like creatures, wars in the heavens among the gods, powerful divine beings interacting with humanity. While these stories differ in detail, the recurring themes suggest that such myths filled deep, symbolic, spiritual, or psychological roles across cultures. Or maybe it's just that they were real. Okay, so they agree that every culture basically had the same story, and Velikovsky certified that and verified that by going basically to every culture and asking for stories and going to the cultural centers, the museums, the libraries, the historical areas, the carvings, statues. He did everything, and he documented it absolutely scrupulously. Put out a book called Worlds in Collision in 1950, where Venus basically almost hit Earth, caused a great flood, turned around and hit Mars dead on and destroyed Mars. Now, what are they saying? Everybody had the same story, everywhere around the world, 100%. And it says, why? Why would that happen? They're looking for psychological help. They need help so that their spiritualness is good. Well, no, it was real. Now, here's the examples. Greco-Roman, giants. The gigantomonarchy describes gods fighting against giants, titans and gigantes. Wars in the heavens. Zeus and the Olympians overthrow Kronos and the Titans, just like we were talking about. Dragons. The Pythons slain by Apollo. Well, there's a lot more dragons than that. Mesopotamian, Sumerian, Babylonian. Gods and sky wars. Enuma Elish. Marduk defeating Chaos, dragon Tiamat. Giants, some interpretations of Apocula, semi-divine beings, describe them as giant-like sages. Norse mythology, same thing. Giants, Jotnar, frost giants, are key adversaries of the gods. Wars in the heavens, has the same thing. Ragnarok, cosmic battle. Serpents, same thing. Jormungandr, dragon-like creature. Hebrews, giants, the Nephilim. Heaven wars, Revelations, war in the heaven between Michael and the dragon, interpreted as Satan, the great red dragon in Revelations. Chinese mythology, dragons benevolent and powerful, often linked to weather, imperial rule. Heavenly conflict, jade emperor, heavenly bureaucracies, and cosmic struggles. They all had the same story, same story. Hindu, gods and demons, ongoing wars in the heavens, serpent-like beings with divine powers, nagas. Feathered serpents, Quetzalcoatl, which I'll show you Quetzalcoatl in a second. He's there too. Same size, basically, as maybe even bigger. Anyway, heavenly conflict, cycles of sun gods, cosmic destruction and renewal. Some depictions of giant beings of races in early mythological cycles. Why are these so widespread? Why?
Roger?
Okay, sorry about that little interruption, but here we go. They're saying, why are they so widespread? Attempts to explain natural forces, archetypes, shared symbols in human psychology. Well, collective memory, major ancient events, yes. Metaphors, no, I don't think so. It's unlikely that every story points to a literal shared history, but the universality of these themes suggests a shared human tendency to imagine the cosmos in these dramatic symbolic terms. No, they can imagine them in reality. And that's the problem, what we got now. They can't deal with the reality. And Bennu is a giant heart in space It's here on Earth. There's no way anybody can deny it, and they just refuse to acknowledge it. It's hard to believe the position we're in is against truth. All right, so don't forget, in space, coming through space, we got blood inside of meteorites because they smelt. We've got muscle sarcomeres inside of the return samples from Bennu, and they have all the same stuff as we have in us, the RNA, the DNA. The chemistry is identical. The anatomy is identical. The blocks are identical. The phospholipid layer is identical. The fibers are identical. It is a heart. The anatomy is identical. You just can't deny it. It's undeniable. To anybody, show this to a heart surgeon. If he says, "Oh no, that's not a heart," yikes! You better run. Hope you don't have a heart attack while you're there. These are hearts. That case is closed. Now, so we got them floating in space, 140 miles wide. That's a pretty good sized creature. I showed you the dragons. Oh, I didn't show you Quetzalcoatl yet. All of this stuff I'm going to back out of now. It is what it is, and nobody can stand up and talk to me about it. And Mars has the same stuff. It has the sarcomeres. These are muscle sarcomeres, just eroded away because after the impact. So they had giant creatures there, just as big as they have them here. And there's no rain had dropped on here. So this is perfectly pristine after the collision. And it's just dried up, and that's the end of it. No more rain. That's why I can tell, no question, this is up on Mars. And this is, they say millions of years it took to do that. That's a dead creature, fell over dead. And this is the interstitium, which is all of the balls that are in the body. And all of the straps, and this is pinched skin. This is skin, and this is stretched skin. All right, I showed you all the Mars. Did I show you the Mars crab? I don't think so. Right there. That's an artery, and that's a vein. These are the artery, the little arterial vessels, and they go into muscle sarcomeres. They're everywhere. Muscle sarcomeres are everywhere because every creature had muscles, has the sarcomeres. And most creatures had a heart, as far as I can determine. They all did. And I think I've shown some pretty damn good evidence to support what I had to say. I was going to show you Quetzalcoatl. There he is there, eating a giant, apparently, because when you see the size of Quetzalcoatl, it's going to be hard to understand how big that giant would have been, because here comes Quetzalcoatl. Here he is right here. It's the east coast of the United States. Here's Florida. This is Quetzalcoatl. It runs all the way up the east coast. There's his head, and you see the different color? That's because it's a different material making his head than the feathers. The feathers turn very green. These are all feathers out of his feathered headdress. And you can see them. You can see feathers. You can dig down in here. You see these? These are feathers. I know feathers quite well. You can see the ridge running right across the top. You got to let it settle in. See that? And these are little barbules going down the sides. That is a very good sized feather. And there's a bunch of them in a row. And it runs all the way up the east coast. And this is just his feather, his headdress. You see, all feathers make things grow green. They sell feather meal, which is nothing more than ground up feathers, and you make things grow. This is Quetzalcoatl's beards. There's his throat, and it goes all the way up through here. This was his throat originally. It comes up around here, and then it goes all the way up the east coast. All the way up the east coast. And there it is right there. It's still feathers. They call it the Green Mountains. Well, they're the Green Mountains because there's feathers that are feeding the plant life up here and making it very green. Those are feathers. You see? Those are feathers. That's a good size creature. From here, let's see, Typhon's 1,300 miles long. This is 1,200 miles long. Somewhere around there. They're both pretty good size. Full grown, I would say. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that, but we have been misled as to what our ancient past is, and it's too much for the average person to accept. Now, the other thing was, I believe now, I'm pretty much believing that the Grand Canyon was where we, the Earth, got impacted by Venus, and it tore the guts out of whatever was here. And swished all the way down to here. You saw, or it came in this way, and ended up bouncing off this, not hitting like it did Mars. Mars just could not take the hit. I think it either hit here and trailed off this way, or came in and, because this looks like the same sort of dischargey looking stuff. Because Earth, after this, Velikovsky said Earth had no oxygen or anything. Almost it couldn't hardly breathe. They couldn't start fires. There wasn't enough oxygen to start a fire. They had to wait for the plant life to recreate the oxygen levels in the atmosphere. And then everything took off when it started to grow again, and then things were not so bad. But Mars just couldn't recuperate. It didn't have any moisture left on the surface. Well, I don't know. I don't want to make a whole lot of statements about what it did or what it didn't. But I can tell you what, it never recovered. And this was something that was written about, and all of the ancient texts had the same story. I showed you. Even AI knows that. It's just true. You can dismiss it all you want, but with the evidence I'm showing, if you dismiss it, you got a problem. And that's what's the problem with academia. They are so close-minded that they have dismissed truth. Totally. And because of their opinion of what they should believe. And the same thing happened with the God lovers. They hate God, so they have to believe none of this could possibly be true. The God lovers dismiss the reality of spheres that are in space because they think something in the Bible didn't say that. And it's just not true. So they're so close-minded they can't wake up to the fact of reality, but they're identical same mindset as academia. There's no difference whatsoever. Academia can't see what's in front of their faces, or the same thing with the flat earthers, they can't. And then they make up all kinds of things about, oh, this is all CGI and it's all fake, and you don't have all of the academics over here. You don't have enough information. We're not going to look because it is. And these guys are just saying, well, water should spin off the earth, and it just turns into a silly argument against what you're seeing as reality. But they can divide each other easily by saying these people that believe this believe the earth is flat, and which is just nonsense, and it makes my research look silly. It does. I mean, they got you working for them. The academics got the people that love God working for the academics by making people that love God look silly. I don't mean it nasty. I don't mean it disrespectfully, but it does. It's a silly thing to say that the earth is flat. It's just silly. And it makes my work that shows that all of these ancient things were real. Makes my stuff look silly because that's the people that come around here and that's what I become associated to. And it's not, I present physical, material evidence. Again, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't care what you believe. But I don't want to have it become a topic of discussion here, which every single time it does. 100% of the times. So, right now, my feeling is, and my opinion is, that if somebody starts up with a flat Earth and the water's flat and there's a glass dome over the Earth and everybody's never been to space and there's no Mars, there's no, any of that stuff, please take it somewhere else. Fine, I have no problem with you believing that. I just don't want to argue it here. It's not a valid argument. It's just not going to happen here. Let's just go with that, please. No disrespect. Thank you. I love you all. What I have shown is reality. And sooner or later, we're going to get there. All right? But we can't make it look silly. I present the evidence every single time. Nothing have I ever said that I didn't have evidence for. And these ancient texts, I consider to be pretty good evidence now. They're so on point with so many places, I can't dismiss them at all anymore.